All right, here we go. It is 3:06 now. News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we are making sense of the news. Coming up today, I've got Reagan Reese, the White House correspondent for the Daily Caller, joining us here in this hour, 3:30. She'll talk to us about what efforts Republicans are undertaking nationwide to prepare for the election in 2024. Election integrity. What are they doing? An update on that story. At 4 o'clock, Mae Mailman joins us from the Independent Women's Forum. We'll talk to her about female athletes now fighting back against men being in their sports. Peter Schweitzer is here at 4:30. We talk to him about his new book and also this TikTok debate on Capitol Hill. And Todd Bensman is here at 5 o'clock. We talk Haiti and all of the illegal aliens coming from there. More headlines on that by the hour. You can join us, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Boy, oh boy, we were awaiting the decision in the Fani Willis fiasco down in Fulton County, Georgia, and we finally have it. Judge McAfee today has decided that he's only going to very lightly spank Fani. He's not removing her from this case today. He says you've got two options. Either you can remove yourself and your entire team, or just get rid of your boyfriend, Nathan Wade. Huh? What? He says there's an appearance of a conflict here, and that there's an odor of mendacity. So how would the odor of mendacity disappear if only one half of the stinkers leave? If Nathan Wade goes, but Fani Willis stays, how does that work? Joining us now with his reaction is our friend Joe DiGenova, legal analyst, former U.S. attorney for the District of Columbia. He joins us on the phone. Joe, good to have you here, sir.
Good to be with you, Vince.
Okay, so Judge McAfee thinks he can split the baby here. What do you make of his decision?
Well, he's not Solomonic, even though he thinks he is.
Yeah.
He concludes his opinion by saying that he hopes this opinion will instill confidence in the process. It does exactly the opposite. His problem is that he thinks this was a judicial proceeding held in private, when in fact it was a judicial proceeding held in public on national television.
Yes.
And everybody saw the same witnesses that he did, the same testimony, and the same proceedings. And most of the American public has concluded that there was perjury committed by people representing the office of the Fulton County District Attorney, and that they lied. In fact, the judge, which is one of the most stupefying things in this opinion, I've read it several times. It's hard to understand how he could conclude what he did when he says things like, even though there's no actual conflict of interest, the appearance of impropriety infects the current structure of the prosecution team, and so the appearance must be removed. And he says, it's really fascinating, he says, the testimony of Willis and Wade was not so incredible as to be inherently unbelievable. How can you write stuff like that and then say that there was no material benefit to her or to him being shared? And he criticizes her manner during the proceeding. He says it was unprofessional. He says he doesn't condone the tremendous lapse in judgment that he shows, and yet he does condone it. So I guess what I come away with is we have a judge who's up for re-election, and it shows. And his conclusions are ludicrous. Everybody in the world knows this, and it's an embarrassment, and I think he showed himself to be incapable of living up to all of our expectations.
Yeah, you know, I read through this as well, not with the legal knowledge that you have and not as routinely as you apparently did today. But when I read through it, I was struck by the fact that the judge found basically all of the people working on Fani Willis's side of the argument to be pretty unbelievable. He was critical of her testimony. He suggested that she was very unprofessional during her time on the witness stand. He didn't find Terrence Bradley's testimony, that would be the law partner of Nathan Wade, to be credible. He thought that it was preposterous the way he was testifying and the way he was trying to dance around the issues. He found Nathan Wade's claims on sworn legal documents. He claimed he wasn't married at the time he was conducting this relationship. He lied in those documents, and he said that he found Nathan Wade to be unbelievable. In light of all of that, why not take this out of the hands of the Fulton County District Attorney's Office entirely? Why say only Nathan Wade needs to go? That seems ridiculous.
Well, because he's up for re-election in a couple of months, and so is Fani Willis. They're on the ballot, and he didn't want to be accused of making a decision which would affect her politically, which means he doesn't understand his role as a judge. This was not a profile in courage. This was a profile in cowardice. He just was sitting over in a corner, whimpering, trying to figure out a way to get out of this. And then he does this cute thing where he says, you have two choices. You can recuse yourself and your entire office, or you can get rid of Mr. Wade. One or the other solves the problem. But unfortunately, either option still leaves one liar still in charge.
Okay. And one at least one other piece here of his opinion today. He suggested that dismissing the case outright would be an extreme thing, and that they need to there can be half measures here. Well, one of those half measures, as far as I'm aware, is he could force the case to be reassigned to a different prosecutor in the state, correct?
Exactly. He could what he could say was, I'm disqualifying both of these people and the office, and I want this case will therefore be sent to the state council on district attorneys, and they will make an assignment. That's how you solve this problem. But he didn't want to do that. He didn't want to take her out of the case. He wanted to give her the option to quote unquote fix this because it was politically acceptable to him. This conclusion is utterly ridiculous based on his own writing and based on all of our observations of these judicial proceedings.
Yeah, I mean, look, in plain language, all of these people were lying in the court. They were lying under oath, and they were all attorneys. They're all people who are supposed to know better, and they're all basically getting away with it. The judge isn't recommending further consequences for Nathan Wade. He's just saying, take him off the case and we can move on.
Yes, and it's really an embarrassment. He should have made referrals to the bar. He doesn't. He talks about the fact that there are other remedies for some of the, he says, whether Wade and Willis testified untruthfully remains unanswered. And then he talks about, well, there are other things going on, like the Georgia State Senate, the county commission, there's the Georgia bar, but he doesn't make a referral. How can you not make a referral with all of the lying that went on in that courtroom by lawyers, as you just said?
By the way, in terms of the political dancing that he's doing, this helps to explain, I think, the reason he threw out 6 charges this week from the Fulton County District Attorney's Office against Trump and his co-defendants. He threw out 3 in particular against Trump, but now it appears that the whole thing was meant to make it seem like he's being an impartial arbiter of the law. In fact, as far as you're aware, as far as you can tell, and as far as I can tell, he's just trying to protect himself going into this election.
That's exactly what he was doing. The fact that he did the dismissal a couple days before he did this was a clear signal that he was trying to figure out a way, on the one hand, on the other hand, again, trying to be Solomonic, but ending up looking like Judge Judy.
Yeah. It's so this trial will move along, but throughout is going to be tainted by the fact that Fani Willis is corrupt as hell and is going to be pursuing Trump. But man, just unbelievable, this decision today by Judge McAfee. It's senseless. Now, I do want to ask you about the classified documents case that Jack Smith has been bringing against Trump. There was a courtroom proceeding yesterday, Judge Eileen Cannon overseeing that case down in Florida. It seems to me that the Robert Hur report, I guess this came up in the court yesterday, the Robert Hur report, the one that concluded that Joe Biden violated all sorts of laws in terms of the handling of classified information, but not enough to be charged because the jury wouldn't find him guilty. Is that enough for Donald Trump to be able to bring a selective prosecution case here?
Well, it's part of, he certainly, it's very helpful to him in that regard, because as I said yesterday, Robert Hur's report shows that one of two things should happen. Either President Biden should be charged with the same crimes that President Trump should be charged with after he leaves office, Biden, or the case against Trump should be dismissed. You can't have one being prosecuted and not the other. First of all, Biden started stealing documents, and let's not put a fine point on this. He started stealing documents in 1974 when he was a senator, and he kept them for 50 years in various places in insecure locations not properly stored. He shared the classified information as he gathered it over the years with third parties who weren't entitled to receive it. This isn't even a close case. His violations of the law are far worse than President Trump's. And so the notion that you can forgive him and continue to prosecute Trump, and by the way, yesterday, apparently Judge Cannon made reference to this, saying that there are appearances here that raise important questions that need to be addressed. Now, that to me was an invitation to a pretty hefty selective prosecution memo and to dismiss it. I mean, I tell you, generally speaking, selective prosecution motions are hardly ever granted. They're extremely difficult to make. The courts don't like them, and they won't do them. And there is good reason for that. I mean, because prosecutors make decisions all the time on similar facts for various reasons. But in this case, when you have, for the first time, a prosecution of a former president for a violation of the Espionage Act by the current president of the United States, who then violates the same statute, and Robert Hur concluded that Joe Biden broke the law, that he violated the Espionage Act, how can you possibly continue to proceed with the case down in Florida? Now, Merrick Garland, who has become an absolute screwball, I don't know what's wrong with the guy. There's something going on upstairs that I don't understand with him. He never would have done stuff like this when he was on the Court of Appeals. His brain was functioning beautifully. He's now become a hack. There's no way a good attorney general would allow the proceeding against Trump in Florida to continue. This case in Florida is now a disgrace. And I hope that Judge Cannon musters a little courage and has some additional hearings and stretches this out a long way. In addition, there's the immunity case in the Supreme Court. And Trump's going to win at least part of that. And if that goes back for more hearings in D.C., if I were the judge down in Florida, Cannon, I'd say we're putting this case on hold until all that gets decided, because immunity can affect this case.
Yeah, and even if they were if the court were to find that Donald Trump was guilty of retaining government documents that he shouldn't have, even if that were the finding, there is no claim that Donald Trump tried to make $8 million off of his access to classified information. There's nothing like that. In Joe Biden's case, he handed off classified information to his ghostwriter as he was receiving an $8 million advance for the very book that the ghostwriter was putting together. So it's the whole thing is insane.
These are called aggravating factors. In other words, during a sentencing proceeding, if Biden were convicted, one of the aggravating factors would be that he took the classified information and used it to make money and shared it with a third person who was helping him make $8 million. That is an aggravating factor. And so it seems to me that, by the way, I just have to tell you, every time I look at the case in Florida, it gets worse and worse for the government on the basis of fundamental fairness and the dual system of justice. You cannot continue to look at these cases in a vacuum. And the Hur report, for all of its flaws, his conclusion is utterly ridiculous. What he should have done, instead of criticizing Donald Trump and making a comparison that Trump's conduct was worse, which it wasn't, he should have said, neither of these cases should go forward. He said, while I'm not going to prosecute President Biden, it clearly indicates that the case against President Trump is on very shaky ground and should not proceed. He didn't do that. He doubled down on Trump for no good reason. That was not part of his warrant.
Yeah. What do you think Robert Hur's play was? Just to whitewash Biden's situation, or was he trying to duck the Justice Department protocols of not prosecuting a current president?
Well, he's an acolyte of Rod Rosenstein. And that means that he's an institutionalist with an eye toward being really, really nasty. And he may have a nice patina and front face of this nice kid. He's very nice looking. I'll give him credit. He did a good job fending off the idiot Democrats up on the Hill. But when all is said and done, he smeared Trump. He probably smeared Biden, but justifiably. And then he walks away with the wrong conclusion, which is, as I said, you gotta prosecute Biden after he leaves office if you're prosecuting Trump, because and I think Hur knew that. He's too smart not to know that. So I view his report as too cute and the wrong conclusion. Right. I'm sure he's a very fine guy, but he blew it. In my opinion, he blew it.
Yeah, it's just amazing how this keeps falling the same exact way. Joe DiGenova, former U.S. attorney. I appreciate it, sir. Great to talk to you as always. Well, here's the breaking news for you now. Nathan Wade, Esquire, has sent a letter to Fani Willis offering his resignation just out via hand delivery. Of course it was via hand delivery. How else would Nathan Wade deliver it to Fani Willis? The furtherance of the rule of law and democracy is and has always been the North Star of our combined efforts in the prosecution of those who are alleged to have attempted to overthrow the results of Georgia's 2020 presidential election. Our team is dedicated to ensuring that a Fulton County jury in a Fulton County courtroom renders a true and just verdict in this case, as directed by the order today in State of Georgia versus Donald John Trump et al. I hereby offer my resignation effective immediately. Yada, 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 yada. I'm proud of the work we've accomplished. I'm sure that the case and the team will be in good hands moving forward, and justice will be served. You, the team on this case, and the entire office have my prayers for your safety and your success in the pursuit of justice. I will see you later. I got those chocolates you like. Respectfully, Nathan J. Wade, Esquire. He didn't say that part at the end. Yeah, so there you go. There's and he barely has a signature. It's just chicken scratch. I'm reading the letter with the chicken scratch signature on it. So that's the solution as proposed by the judge today. You get rid of Nathan Wade, then the stinkiness goes away. I don't think so. Considering that she was the other half of the stinkiness, the stench remains, and it will continue to infect this case. My thanks, as always, to Joe DiGenova for jumping on with us. I said, as soon as I saw the news break today, I texted Corey, our producer, and I said, I think it's time for a Joe DiGenova rager, don't you think? And he agreed violently, and I'm glad Joe stopped by. And if you missed it, you can hear it on the podcast. Don't forget the Vince Coglianese Show podcast. It's always available for your consumption. Reagan Reese is going to join us just minutes from now, the White House correspondent for the Daily Caller. In case you're wondering what Republicans have been up to when it comes to election integrity, well, she's been digging in on that very question. Answers ahead. Hey, good afternoon to you. It is 3:35 now, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up, 4 o'clock, we'll be joined by May Mailman, director of the Independent Women's Forum Law Center, as female athletes are now fighting back against the men who are cheating in their sports. Peter Schweitzer will be here at 4:30. We talked to him about his new book and the TikTok debate on Capitol Hill this week. And Todd Bensman is here at 5 o'clock. As we discuss the Haitian illegal alien crisis that's only growing in the United States. Also, we'll ask him about the rumors of cannibalism going on down in Haiti. Might be good to get some answers there before you plan your vacation. Hey, you can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Are Republicans ready for the 2024 election when it comes to all of the legal fights? Are they prepared to maintain an election that has some integrity? What kind of efforts have they been undertaking in the first place? Well, my next guest has been digging into this and has produced some answers for us. She's Reagan Reese, the White House correspondent for the Daily Caller, and she joins us now. Hello, Reagan. Good to have you with us.
Hey, Vince. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so obviously, huge question. A lot of conservatives want to know what has changed since 2020, and you've been digging into this. Give us a sense of what you've discovered.
Yeah, a lot of conservatives want to know, and a lot of conservatives are concerned. And despite the efforts of the RNC and its partners in this large field of election integrity organizations, things in their current state are shaping up to look a lot like 2020. There's at least 7 swing states that are slated to deploy ballot drop boxes. Nearly all are likely to have no excuse absentee voting. 5 swing states are on track to have more than 2 weeks of early voting. And the RNC is making an effort alongside of its partners at the NRCC and the NRSC. But despite filing 79 lawsuits, there's still these states with key concerns.
Is there a centralized effort to address each of these state election integrity efforts, or is it kind of scattershot right now across the country? What's going on in terms of the organization here?
Yeah, so the left has a more organized effort. Mark Elias is that name that we know that the Democrats have deployed to kind of lead the effort. When I, directly asked the RNC, is there a Mark Elias of the right? The answer was no, that this is more of just a robust effort on the right. There are nonprofit organizations who are going to tackle their areas. And then the RNC, the NRSC, and the NRCC are partnering up and, bankrolling this effort to tackle the states that they see to be a problem. So it does look to be more of this scattershot. There were organizations who brought up to me who were just kind of on their fight on their own, True the Vote being one, who had no idea what the RNC was doing, despite being in this election integrity battle with them.
Wow, how interesting. So obviously the RNC just underwent a leadership change as Ronald McDaniel left, and now we have is Michael Whatley. He comes in from North Carolina to lead the Republican National Committee now. Have you noticed any change in terms of their attitudes around this issue with the change in leadership?
Yeah, I think with the new leadership right now, it's kind of hard to get a complete read on it because there's my read is that there's a bit of a transition period. There was a bit of confusion over whether the election integrity staff had been laid off. There was an earlier report that they had. And then yesterday, I spoke to both Trump officials and RNC officials who said that's not true at all. But when I did get to speak with an RNC official yesterday, he told me that they're already starting to rebrand, that there's a lot more voices in the room about how they're approaching election integrity. Laura Trump today announced that Scott Pressler is going to be leading up this legal ballot chasing vote. So there's already seeming to be more of a excitement around the effort.
Yeah, interesting. So I have some audio here. I'll play some of this. Laura Trump was on with our friend Benny Johnson earlier today and indicated that they are taking election integrity very seriously here. Let me see if I can't get this audio for you. Here is Laura Trump earlier today.
So at the RNC, it is something that we're taking incredibly seriously. We have the first ever election integrity division. This is an entire wing of the building dedicated solely to that. So how do you do that? Right now, you just talked about a lawsuit we have in Michigan. We have in 23 states, 78 lawsuits single-handedly to address this issue, to make it easier to vote and harder to cheat in 2024. We know about all the states who illegally changed their voting laws in 2020 under the guise of COVID. It flips some of those back around, but it also adds an extra layer of protection on top of that. In addition, we now have the ability to train poll workers. These are not just poll watchers, people who physically stand in a polling location and kind of look around and maybe might be able to see something. These are people, Benny, who get to handle a ballot, who can count the ballots coming in and the ballots going out, so they know what the numbers should be at the end of the day. On top of that, we are also hiring and we are asking for volunteer attorneys all across this country. We want you in a polling location near you every single minute that there is voting going on.
So this all sounds encouraging, but it also, I should note, we're only, how many months away now from the election. And this is the kind of thing that could have been happening in more earnest since 2020. What's been happening since 2020? Why did it take this long?
Oh, man, Vince, Republicans are 40 years behind. The RNC was subjected to a consent decree in 1982 after the DNC, the Democrat National Committee, sued them and kind of neutered their ability to really chase down this election integrity effort. That lifted in 2018. And then when I asked the RNC kind of why the holdup, because they didn't really begin this election integrity effort until 2022, they said before that it was just a proof of concept, and that was what this, their efforts were a proof of concept is how they explained it to me. And then in 2023, former chairman Ronna McDaniel moved to make the election integrity department or the election integrity an actual department of the RNC, allowing them to get more funding, pull different resources. And so I think it's pretty fair to say that this effort really only began a year ago.
Interesting. So I understand in your coverage, you point out that there are a number of organizations that are a part of this. And you just said that, in fact, the RNC, the National Republican Congressional Committee, the NRCC, as well as the National Republican Senatorial Committee, the NRSC. In your reporting, you had a conversation with somebody at the NRCC by the name of Will Reinert, is featured prominently in your article this morning, who seemed to dismiss this entire topic out of hand. What happened here?
Yeah, so in some ways it's easy to understand why we still have laws where there are interesting, we still have states that have interesting laws in place, because a lot of Republicans are also focused on, kind of playing by Democrats' rules. So we reached out to the NRCC after finding out that they were, working hand in hand with the RNC on this effort. And they sent back an Axios link about their get out to vote efforts, and told me it would be great background information. And when we called that out as lazy, Will responded and said, quote, "We've complained about your coverage several times to editors. So to tell you the truth, we really don't care to engage on pieces we don't care about to help you guys out," end quote. And so that was just the explanation that they seem to not care about election integrity efforts and are instead focusing on this get out to vote effort.
It's maddening. It's totally maddening. And so meanwhile, like the Republican base, this is the one thing they've been asking for, as right? I mean, you have people across the country going, I just want an election that's believable, credible, that has integrity, that accurately counts the vote. That's all I want. And you have people who are a part of the establishment Republican Party who are literally just like shrugging that off, apparently.
Yeah, it's a real concern because we've seen a lot of chatter around this. I mean, we see a ton of talk from former President Trump about this issue, and Americans are concerned. And then to see one of the arms who is, reportedly working hand in hand with the RNC and pouring millions into this is kind of just, mailing it in when a reporter who wants to kind of broadcast their efforts is coming to them with an interview request.
Yeah. No, you're totally right. That's disheartening. But again, the change in leadership at the RNC, they seem to be taking very seriously the idea that election integrity is important, and so I guess we'll see in the weeks ahead whether or not they undertake a real effort here. Is this enough time? To leading up to the November elections, do they have enough time legally to deal with all these issues, whether it be ballot drop boxes or absentee ballots or any other issues across the country?
That's another great question that I think we're going to see kind of unravel in the coming months. They told me that they plan to file 100 lawsuits in this election cycle before November. So there clearly is an indication with the RNC that there is more time to overturn some laws and make some changes. They just filed one in Michigan surrounding voter rolls yesterday. So, there's still efforts that are ongoing, which indicates to me that there is still a chance to make a play in these states.
All right. Reagan Reese, White House correspondent over at the Daily Caller. Thank you for your in-depth coverage today. Great piece over on the Daily Caller, where I should point out, as always, I'm also an editor there as well. Reagan, thank you very much. Good to talk to you.
Thanks, Vince.
Okay. I do want to play some more audio from Lara Trump today. Because in that interview with Benny Johnson, she did emphasize that, there's been this question for some time. Will the RNC work with people like Scott Presler? We had Scott Presler on a couple weeks back, and we were talking about this, and he was basically working from the outside. He's like, no, I'm not really getting the support there, but he's been running these voter registration drives at places where Republicans congregate, especially places like gun shows and churches, and trying to get people registered to vote so that they can participate in November. It's a noble effort. And Lara Trump today telling Benny Johnson that they're going to be leaning on. Now, the RNC is going to start leaning on Scott Presler. They're going to work with him now. And they're going to do everything they can, whether it be, changing these laws or working with the laws as they exist in all of these states, including with ballot harvesting.
But we also have to start thinking about things like legal ballot harvesting, something we've never embraced as a party. We're going to start doing it now. I'm going to have a call very soon with Scott Pressler, who is an amazing vote registrar. He has registered so many people in this country. I think he's fantastic. I want him on our legal ballot harvesting division. We also have to embrace early voting, Benny. I know we want 1 day of voting in this country. It doesn't.
You know, the ballot harvesting, in case you're unfamiliar or you don't know exactly what that means, ballot harvesting is when a third-party political operative takes your ballot from you and delivers it on your behalf. And Democrats have been doing this with aggression for years, including in states like California, where it is unfortunately legal to do. It's legal. And typically when it involves Democrats, what that means is they're going to old folks' homes and compelling elderly people who are in Joe Biden's state to fill out their ballots in the way that the political operative prescribes, then taking their ballots from them and putting those ballots in. So ballot harvesting, normally you can't do that. A lot of states across the country, you're not allowed to have a third-party political operative take your ballot from you, and then they have to decide whether or not your ballot makes it to the end goal. But here you have Lara Trump saying, well, so long as ballot harvesting is legal, Republicans should be doing it.
Exists right now. We've got to bank enough votes going into November 5th that we're not playing catch up on election day. We need to swamp the system so it doesn't matter how many 3 a.m. drops they have or suitcases filled with ballots. There will be no question on the night of November 5th that Donald Trump is elected as the 47th president.
All right. And then she has a little bit more praise for Scott Pressler and says it's important that he's a part of the process.
Yes, Scott Pressler, please.
Yeah,
he's such an
amazing
ally of the show. We love him so much. And so this will finally become real. The internet will win, and Scott Pressler will be part of the integrated process to actually save America. Yes.
He is the first person I thought of whenever the whole idea of the RNC was floated to me. I said, if I end up there, if I'm co-chair of the RNC, I want to bring him in because what a job that guy has done. Not only should he be rewarded for it, but we want to give him more jobs to do up until November 5th and then well beyond.
Also, he's a critical example of what Republican activism should look like. Right? The guy who's actually, putting in all the footwork and registering people to vote and turning them out in November. That's exactly the kind of activism you want. And he's undertaking it. So there you go. So some indications from the RNC that they're taking all of this very seriously. This is, the most vocal I've heard them be about this issue. And again, thank you to Reagan Reese for digging in on it. Hopefully it rattles enough cages to get everybody focused on the right things this year. Let's go to the phones. That's where we find Nick in Purcellville, line 2. Nick, good afternoon. You're on the Vince Colonnese Show. Hello.
Hey, Vince. There's a lot we can do as garden variety citizens in this election. And I emailed my Commonwealth attorney, Bob Anderson, and I asked him if he is going to charge people with voter fraud in this next election. I haven't heard anything back yet, and that's been 10 days. Mm-hmm. But I think that if all your listeners out there who live in different counties would do the same thing, and it won't take you anything but an email. And then also we can all poll watch, and if you don't have money to give to a campaign, then poll watch and watch the people coming in and make sure that the people that aren't registered or aren't citizens, they don't get to put a provisional ballot in, So, but I also emailed Buddha Bijara when she was the Commonwealth attorney. Of course, I didn't get any response from her.
Of course not.
But I'm hoping that Bob Anderson will do something. And I offered to post on the at the polling places, what could happen if you vote, fraudulently. So I'm hoping that this is going to happen. That would be the very least we could do is put the rules out there for people to beware. And I have never heard of anybody being charged here in Loudoun County of voting fraud.
Well, you're right about what can be done here, which is that you can volunteer. You can be a poll watcher. You can be a poll worker. That's a perfectly good way to exercise your obligations as an American citizen and to ensure the integrity of the vote. That's a good idea, and thank you for that, Nick. It's and reminding government officials that they do have a job to do is always a good idea. Wear out those phones and emails for sure, and remind them, hey, I'm watching. I'm definitely watching. Coming up on the program, May Mailman will be with us from the Independent Women's Forum Law Center. We'll talk about female athletes who are now trying to stop men from cheating in their sports. A big lawsuit, a big conversation ahead.